Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, so I would just like to welcome everybody to the launch of the 2020 Namibia Transparency Assessment Report and the announcement of the winners of the 2020 Golden Key and Golden Padlock Awards. Now we'll explain what these are as we go along. But first, I'd just like us to structure this event, which is an hour long. So what I'll do is I will just do some brief introductory remarks, and then our associate from the MISA regional office in Zambia, Thomas Zulu, who is also the editor and coordinator of the Transparency Assessment Study, will give us a regional and historical overview. And then we will do the Namibia section of launch of the study, which will be done by Ms. Emilia Paulus of the Namibia Media Trust and of the ACTION Namibia Coalition. And then afterwards, we will have a Q&A session. And then we will do the final remarks, which will be done by myself. As you're all probably aware at this stage, today is International Day for Universal Access to Information. And the theme of today's event, of this year's IDUAI, is access to information, saving lives, building trust, and bringing hope. And I think we can all agree that the theme is very appropriate for the times we live in, and for the times we'll probably still be that we have to look forward to over the next year or so in these COVID-19 times. So it is against this backdrop that we are launching these transparency reports, that MISA Regional has done this. And it's important to take note at this stage, given where Namibia is, that we have signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals and various other instruments that speak to access to information and the importance of it. And our president, the Namibian president, has repeatedly, touted his administration's commitment to transparency, to access to information, and to media freedom. All of these going together, and to freedom of expression, of course. We are not doing this. I just want to say at the outset, the assessments that we have done are not aimed at embarrassing or humiliating any official or any government department. This is about trying to make things better, about making systems working better, about engendering greater transparency and accountability. And at times like these, we really see why transparency and accountability, why access to information are so important. And in that sense, to a large extent, within the COVID-19 context, we've seen some relatively good communication from especially health authorities, which should be commended. Because in many other places, this sort of information sharing, this sort of communication is not happening. So Namibia is fortunate, I think, in that sense, at this stage, that we have health authorities who are committed to being as open as they are at this stage. Of course, things can be better. There are still information gaps out there, and these are the areas that need to be addressed. So just to reiterate once again, we are not out, this assessment is not out to cause embarrassment, but is to improve systems, to improve processes of transparency. This has been, this project has been run for more than a decade with this aim. And I see now that our associate from MISA Regional, Thomas Zulu, the editor and coordinator of the Transparency Assessment Project, has joined us now. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Thomas to give us the regional and historical overview before we go into the Namibia assessment. Thomas, thank you very much for joining us and welcome, and the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Thomas.
Yes, but basically we're trying to talk about the transparency assessment that we've been doing in various countries. Like this year, we did it in 9 countries. Maybe by way of introduction, we'll talk about a little bit about access to information, which we all know that it is the right to information, which is internationally recognized as a human right, which is critical to democratic and accountable governance. Yes, we know that effective right to information promotes citizen participation, and an informed populace builds trust in government by preventing false rumors from spreading through the dissemination of true information, and it can help to combat corruption and promote effective and efficient governance. Now, talking about the transparency assessment, since 2009, which is about 12 years now, the MISA has evaluated the level of openness of government and public institutions together with other partners in countries where MISA is not present, like Namibia. We have Namibia Media Trust, and also working with the coalition. The transparency we have carried out by MISA chapters along other partners, and this study seeks to establish the ease or difficulty with which citizens can access public information. Like Frederico alluded to, it's not a way of trying to embarrass institutions. It's all about seeing how easy citizens are able to access public information. After all, it is their information that is being held by these public bodies. So mainly this assessment is done in 2 categories. So we have one category which evaluates governmental and public institutions' online platforms to determine the accessibility and presence of credible and updated public information, which includes, but is not limited to, powers and functions of the organizations in question, their budgetary allocations, procurement procedures, and also contact details. That's the first category. So it's all about the online platforms of these government and public institutions. Then the other category looks at information requests that are submitted to these institutions in order to determine the ease with which public information is obtained from government and also public organizations. So usually we have a researcher who writes to these institutions that have been targeted on during that particular year to see how members of the public should be able to get this information. And usually we do not actually advise that members from well-known institutions be able to write to these public institutions, because it becomes easy for them to give out information because they know that they are coming from an established institution. So we look at the individuals, just the common citizens, to see how they are able to access this kind of information. I know there are times which comes out reports that they'll ask you, why do you need this information? Where are you coming from? How do you want to use this kind of information? And this year was the 11th transparency assessment that we did in 9 countries. That's in Namibia, Zambia, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Malawi, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. So we did it in 9 countries. So in all these countries, we worked with the MISA chapters in countries and also with the Namibia Media Trust and ACTION Namibia Coalition. So this is how we worked in all these 9 countries. The assessment began in June to July of 2020. The research was conducted in these 9 countries that have been mentioned. And We had these researchers send out information requests to selected organizations, anticipating answers to their questions within 21 days. So the researchers also assessed whether relevant information from contact details to budgetary information had proactively been made available by public bodies through an online platform. So these are the things that we're looking at. So the 11th Transparency Assessment Report, the study highlighted the fact that ordinary citizens still face challenges in receiving information from public institutions, because the number of researchers that were engaged to get this information, a number of them could be told that sometimes we just end at, who are you? Why do you want this information? Can you tell us the institution that you are representing? How do you want to use this information that you are requesting from us? So we see that citizens have this challenge, the ordinary citizens have this challenge of getting information from public institutions, despite some countries in the region having access to information pieces of legislation. So it needs to be pointed out that some public bodies were exemplary in their provision of services, responding speedily, being helpful, accommodating, and open to any follow-up questions that may arise at a later stage. So others were very exemplary, actually, even calling researchers that in case you need more information, please get back to us as soon as possible. And even the referring, sometimes even adding the information that has not been asked by the researchers, which was quite encouraging. A big note is two of the institutions that were surveyed, like in Zambia and Malawi, were the electoral commissions of Zambia and also the electoral commission of Malawi, which showed a great deal of transparency, receiving 32 and 33 points respectively in survey. It must be noted that from the two categories that I mentioned, each category had 20 points. And we all know that Malawi had its fresh presidential election this year, while Zambia goes to the polls in 2021. This probably could be encouraging, more especially Zambia, which goes to the polls next year, because there have been all these issues that these commissions are not independent and they had a lot of information. There's a lot of malpractice. So this is encouraging in terms of their accessible in terms of information and how they're able. So out of what has come out, thinking that it is important that information is made automatically available to the public in simple and concise language, where possible, translated into the local languages. The SADC and also the African Union should be more proactive in its efforts to ensure that freedom of expression and access to information in Africa, by defining, more especially in the SADC region, by defining and codifying the right of access to information as a fundamental human right. For example, we had a situation in Mozambique. Mozambique, we all know, that has the access to information law. But on paper, it can be crucial positive development in a country, but in itself is not a guarantee for government openness. As an example, in Mozambique, there is no openness. For example, this is exemplified by one of the institutions in Mozambique, that's the Secretary of State for Youth and Employment, which actually had 0 out of 40. They don't have a website and they could not respond to requests and get the country, and this is a public institution, and the country has got the access to information law. So we expect the SADC in the African Union should be more proactive in their efforts to ensure freedom of expression and access to information in Africa by defining and codifying the right of access to information as a fundamental human right. These countries all have this access to information law because public bodies do not hold this information by for themselves. It is information that is supposed to be for members of the public. Then they're just custodians of this information. And by bringing out this information, by sharing this information, they are not doing citizens a favor, but because it is a human right. So where freedom of information laws do not exist, any other legislation that provide for access to information should be used. Mere existence of constitutional provisions on freedom of expression and acts do not always mean the access to information is realized in any country. So on the other hand, transparency cannot be realized if the laws that exist are not implemented. So those are the issues that we may be able to look at in terms of, as we continue advocating that in as much as we have these laws in our countries, some of them is just on paper, but citizens are not benefiting from the same laws. Yes, those which still have draft laws, it is important that we continue engaging these governments, continue engaging policymakers that these laws these bills are acted into laws in these various countries. We thank Malawi, who's having their access to information law operationalized in the next 2 days, which is a good development for us. Thank you so much, Frederick.
Thank you so much, Thomas. And I mean, we missed some important sections there, and I think once the report is released, I'd encourage everybody who is here and everybody who will view this afterwards to take a look at the overall regional report. Yes. So what we're going to do now is take a look at the Namibia transparency report, what came out of the assessment. Now, I'd just like to say that the report, I understand there were last minute changes that had to be made, and it should be available sometime today. But maybe Thomas can just tell us afterwards, after the Namibia section of the report has been launched, when we can expect that, so that we can then have it up on the ACTION and the Namibia Media Trust websites, where the full report for the country, as well as a fact sheet, sort of a summary sheet of the Namibia assessment, can be viewed and downloaded. So what we're going to do now is go straight into the Namibia leg of the assessment, of transparency assessment, and then talk about the outcome, what was assessed and who was assessed, and what the outcomes are, who ultimately will get the 2 awards, the 2020 Golden Padlock Award, which will be for not yet meeting recommended standards for the disclosure of public information. And then the Golden Key Award, which is given out in acknowledgement of an organization's efforts to disclose information to the public. And we will reveal these 2 state departments that we will be giving these 2 awards to. So I'm going to speak now to Ms. Emilia Paulus, who is with the Namibia Media Trust and with the ACTION Coalition, and she was responsible for compiling the Namibia leg of the transparency assessment. So let's talk about the Namibia transparency report. And firstly, how many organizations were part of the assessment?
Okay, so thank you so much, Frederico. In June 2020, we started with a study along with other chapters in Southern Africa. So what we started with is we sent out letters of information requests to the institutions that we selected for the survey. There were 10 institutions, and they are Rongo Regional Council, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Fisheries, Ministry of Gender, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Home Affairs, Immigration, Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Ministry of Labor, and the National Youth Council. So we sent out letters of information requests, just requesting for information as general members of public. We did not inform them that we were writing to them from the NMT or ACTION, because we wanted to have a study that is a representative of citizens or the general public of Namibia. So some of the questions that we asked were, you know, how the institutions are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, what resources are there, the mandates of the organization, and many more. So also we also did a desktop sort of study where we looked at the online platforms of the institutions that we were studying, and we were basically looking at the amount of information that is available, how often the social media platforms and the website are updated, and the level of engagement on those platforms. So when we did that, and then yeah, we finalized the study, and now we have the winners, and we will reveal at the end of this engagement.
Thanks for that overview, Emilia. So in terms of you know, sort of the before we go to the actual winners of these prizes, you know, tell us, could you sort of just give us an example of a specific question that, for instance, the Ministry of Finance, the question or questions that were sent to the ministry that an ordinary Namibian, for instance, would have asked or wanted to know, get information about?
Okay, so maybe I can just give you the questions that we sent to the Ministry of, okay, let's look at the Ministry of Health. So some of the questions that we sent to them were, for example, what is the psychosocial support that is being given to people who are suffering from COVID-19? And then we also asked what the ministry is doing about children who are affected by COVID-19. And we also asked, okay, so how the ministry is dealing with the complications that are stemming from people who are having abortions or illegal abortions in Namibia. So we really just looked at the normal circumstances of the general public, what a normal person or a normal young girl in Kunene region would have questions about. So those are the questions that we highlighted in the study.
So how would you you know, assess the general responsiveness or the engagement with these government departments over this period, over the research period? What was the standout sort of response for you?
Okay, some ministries were very responsive. For example, the Ministry of Labor. When we sent out the questions, they responded immediately, and they even offered to help us further. They referred us to the Ministry of Labor, to the Ministry of Trade and Industry for one question that they couldn't answer. And they followed up on the whole process, and that was really commendable. And also some other ministries, for example, the Ministry of Fisheries, these ministries were very responsive. But then we also noted some delay in response, for example, with the Ministry of Finance, where they just took long to respond, and at the end they told us they can't respond to the questions because they are inundated with a whole lot of issues at the moment, which are COVID-19 issues. But I mean, it's very important to note that even during the COVID-19 pandemic, we need to ensure that information is made available to the people, because I mean, how else can we fight the pandemic if we do not have information that is being requested for, or if people can't access the important questions or answers to questions that they have. So some other challenges that we experienced were with people promising to send out answers, and they never responded. So you know, it was, you know, some ministries were really good, others were not. And I just want to encourage ministries to, you know, even if there's so much you are doing, especially the public relations officers, with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic, always endeavor to ensure that information is shared with the people. And because, I mean, you can't fight this battle alone. So give out as much information as possible, because people need information. People need information to change their lives and to better their lives in their communities. So, I mean, we're only looking at the responses now, but I mean, in terms of the studies that we did online, we noticed that some ministries have really good websites that are active, and they are updated on a constant basis, and there's content coming out all the time. Some websites also had COVID-19 updates, which is really good. But others would have, for example, a Facebook page where they don't, where they just dump content and they don't engage with the public. You know, citizens are there asking questions, but no one is responding. So that is a way of silencing the public, because when they put information there, it's for engagement, and there must be someone who is there to respond. So those are some of the challenges that we faced.
So I think, I mean, what I'm hearing is, you know, there's this inconsistency in how government departments, you know, approach the issue of engagement and communication with the public. And I think this is a long-standing issue. It's not something that is just emerged now. And I think, I mean, once again, the issue of a statewide communication strategy that is actually implemented, that actually speaks to you know, the institutional need to communicate properly, and not you know, be dependent on the specific individuals. And I think in a lot of cases over the years, the issue has been the individual that is at that point in the position of that gatekeeper, as a ministerial spokesperson or communications person. And it shouldn't be that way. There should be consistency in terms of how government departments engage with the public, and responds to public requests for information. So I think, I mean, is there anything else you'd like to share with us at this stage? Because I think we can go on to the awards themselves, and then just briefly talk about, you know, what it was that you know, why the specific institution got the specific award that we're giving out now. So firstly, I mean, this is the, I think we'll do the Golden Key Award first. This is the Golden Key Award, which will be taken and handed to the representative of the government department that has been awarded this specific award. I think over the next few days, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow, but definitely over the next few days. So the Golden Key Award for 2020 goes to the Ministry of Labour, Industrial Relations and Employment Creation. And this is the award. So Emilia, I think you've already sketched sort of what it, you know, what it was that you know, got them, this specific government department, this award. Maybe you could you know, just as something that could probably emulate it, tell us just, you know, what was the standout engagement with this ministry over the information that you were seeking, you know, that was decisive in them getting this this award.
Okay, with the Ministry of Labour, as I mentioned before, They were very responsive. They followed up on the questions that they gave, if they were enough, or if we managed to finish our study. They basically just kept in touch from the moment we sent out the letter of request. So that is what got them the award. And also their social media is doing well. Their website is constantly updated, because some of the things we looked at is that when last did the ministry post new content, relevant content that the public need. They had most of the documents that we were looking for. For example, they had information about vacancies and things like that. So that is really what got them the award, because that level of commitment for access to information must be commended, because with other ministries, people just decided to not respond. They took their time to respond, because as Thomas said earlier, every institution was given 21 days to respond. And they responded within 7 days of sending out the requests. And that is what I think other ministries should be doing. There must be people in the organization who are entrusted with a role of, just sharing information, because what's the use of having these public relations officers if they are not providing information to the people? So I really commend, I think her name is Maria, Maria, I can't remember her surname, but she was really helpful. Yeah, maybe you can show the golden padlock.
The golden padlock award. This is the award for the government institution which was most unresponsive, which did not provide any information or even acknowledged the information request. And the 2020 golden padlock award goes to the National Youth Council of Namibia, which is sort of strange, because I mean everything at the moment is very much about youth and youth empowerment, and what can be done in terms of youth upliftment. And if a strategic institution such as the National Youth Council is this unresponsive to a researcher, what is the situation for your average Namibian youth out there in a rural area, for instance, who needs critical information that would really help them in their personal development, for instance, or in their community development, to want to make a difference in their community. If this frontline institution in what is supposed to be an organization that, a government sort of landscape that is supposed to help with youth empowerment and upliftment, if this first institution, this first frontline institution is so unresponsive. So maybe you could just sort of sketch the situation that you faced when you tried to get information out of the National Youth Council.
Okay, with the National Youth Council, from the time we sent out the request, the public relations officer was always unavailable. We followed up, we called him, and he was just not responsive. And we had to constantly, beg him for the information that we were requesting, and he kept promising that he will share the information, and he just never, sent out those answers. So also when we looked at their website, the website doesn't contain updated information. It's very old, outdated information that might be relevant at this time of COVID-19. Also, when we check their Facebook, it's really active in terms of the user, from the user's end, but and they also post relevant content on Facebook, but the level of engagement, as I said, is so poor. They don't respond to what the people are writing on their Facebook page, and their Twitter page is lying dormant for a few years now. So I think there is a need to prioritize in terms of which platform works well for you as a government institution, which one reaches the constituency that you are dealing with. For example, the youth are on Twitter and Facebook, and those are the platforms that you need to be active and engaging with the youth, engaging with your audiences at all times and responding to all these comments, because, you know, people depend on government institutions for information, and this is public information that should never be withheld. You know, this is information that we need. This is information that should be made available proactively to the people. So before, even when people request for information, the information should be up on the website, it should be on social media platforms, and people should be engaged, because, I mean, these are people that we have entrusted with these positions to, you know, handle our information and our service delivery. So if they're not responsive to the people, then people will be, people's lives will be basically directionless, because they won't have any information to improve their lives. So the National Youth Council really, I think, needs to do more. I did some research. I'm told that they're working on a communication strategy at the moment, which is a good thing. I think this is a step in the right direction for them to really improve the way they provide and make information available to the people. I must, Frederico, I also just wanted to recognize some of the ministries that did well. For example, the Ministry of Information also did well. They responded, although not within that allocated time that we gave them. Also, the Ministry of Gender, they did well in terms of the information requests, and the Ministry of Health also did well, especially on their website. There has been, I really think that there are government institutions that are doing a lot to make sure that access to information is realized in Namibia, and they need to be commended.
Thank you for that, Emilia. So yeah, so I think with that, I think we can open it up, and if there are any questions or responses from the government communications people here, that this would be the time to address it, if there's anything. Or perhaps, I mean, if there's any specific challenge as a government communications person, maybe we could talk about that briefly.
Frederico.
Yes, Herman, please go ahead.
Let me just start by, you know, congratulating you for doing that research. It actually is commendable, because it keeps us on our toes, because we are here to disseminate government information to the populace. And I think for the other PROs, the public relations officers, it's a time now for us to up our game, because access to information bill is on its way, and it's going to keep us, you know, it's going to give us a lot of work to do. So we have to prepare before its enactment, so that when it's enacted, at least we can do what is expected of us in the provisions of this access to information legislation. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Herman. Is there anybody else who would like to add something to what maybe Herman said there? Do we have an indication of when the report will be up on the websites, on the Action Coalition and the Namibia Media Trust websites?
As mentioned earlier, I think the report will be up as soon as we are done. I think by, let's say, 2 o'clock, we will have the report ready for people to download and view on our website, social media platforms with those links, and then you can just access them.
And just to be clear, you would be available to media organizations who wish to ask you questions and get some more information about this.
Yes, I will be.
All right. I think we'll end shortly. I just want to emphasize some things about today's International Day for Universal Access to Information, and just some of a statement sort of highlight some of the things that in a statement that was issued by the Action Coalition today. And firstly, of course, underscore that we would really appreciate, and I think Namibia in general, if you know, the access to information bill, which is currently in Parliament, is now finally enacted within this financial year, the 2020-2021 financial year. If it could be done before the close of 2020, it would really be good. And I think the fact that we have reached a point where this has become critical cannot be argued. We have we make some other calls that have to do with transparency. For instance, we would like to see the Whistleblower and Witness Protection Acts implemented, which have been passed in 2017 already. We would like to see in this climate where corruption has started to dominate the public discussion landscape, we would like to see meaningful assets and interest declaration regulations put in place, a formalized system. And this is something that we have signed up to under various agreements, international instruments, regional instruments, and continental instruments, that this be given life, these sorts of instruments in Namibian law. And for a greater culture of openness, especially around our natural resources. We would like to, at the very least, see a government adopt some of the principles of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, if not joining the initiative itself. And these will go a long way in building trust. If we go back to the theme of this year's Access to International Day for Universal Access to Information, it's about building trust. It's about saving lives. It's about giving hope. And I think having some of these mechanisms, these laws, these regulations in place would really go a long way in terms of the Namibian government building trust, in terms of the Namibian government giving people hope for the future. And of course, in a time of COVID-19, when a lot of procurement is, for instance, being done to expedite our response to COVID-19, that transparency and accountability processes, for instance, of the Public Procurement Act are respected, and the letter of the law is followed as far as possible. even in a situation where we have to respond, and it's understandable, respond quicker than under normal circumstances. So these are some of the things we call on this day, that we call on the Namibian government and relevant decision-making and political authorities to give consideration to work towards, in terms of coming access to information days, that we can, when we do report, say next year, that we'll have a law in place, and that some of the things that we've been calling for over the years will also have been introduced or implemented. We would certainly like to encourage the Namibian government in that direction. So having said that, I would like to thank both Emilia Paulus of the Namibia Media Trust and of the ACTION Coalition, and Thomas Zulu of MISA Regional, and all of you for making time to be part of this presentation. And please do check in and to see if the report or the reports are available online by 2 o'clock this afternoon. And please do give us your feedback, and we would really appreciate it. We too are open to improving our processes, improving our research, improving our engagements with government departments, not just in Namibia, but I think regionally as well. And this is what this is about, making systems, processes better and more responsive to the citizens of Southern Africa. Yeah, I think with that said, if there's nothing else, I think we end the meeting there right on time. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much, and goodbye.